Welcome, everyone. This is David Morgan of themorganreport.com, and today I have David Dubine from Adapt 2030. David, it's been a while since we got to communicate one-on-one for the public's benefit. And I remember, I think in the first interview that we did or discussion, it's a conversation between us. We're talking about food before it really was that well known that we're having all of these crises. And I talked about a lot of the work that you've done on your website, Adapt 2030, with, locusts, weather problems, the coming ice age, inability to get materials like, oil supplies, really. I mean, a lot of the fertilizer are oil-based. So all kinds of different synergistic things that touch each other that are required to get that food production at a level that it has been sustained. And so now it's degrading, it's supply chains, it's all these things. But the one big takeaway, which pretty much stunned me, was when we went over that, we talked about what has happened in the past. And of course, the history rhymes, it doesn't repeat exactly, was the amount of cost for food. And I think it was somewhere around 400%. So, if you're looking at someone not in the Western world where we're paying maybe 5% of our income to buy food, if it goes quadruple, that's 20-25%. But someone in Indonesia or the Asian countries or less developed economies, I mean, you're talking what the Bible says. It's a day's wages for some barley kind of thing. Can we go over that again, because it really stunned me, and I don't think people really heard it the first time.
I will, and I thank you for bringing me on again. A few things happening through the news in the last couple of weeks are setting up 2022 in the very beginning quarter of January, February, March to be something that's going to be society rifting and shaking to the point where it really is going to start to test and tear the threads of our current civilization that we understand. So if we go back a couple of weeks, CF Industries CEO came out and said, this is it. Ammonia prices have risen 13x. Natural gas is not where it should be in terms of volumes in certain areas where they do produce fertilizer, the EU specifically. Pipelines here in America shutting down, and just a lot of logistics of getting that base, whatever it is, into a factory to produce these what we consider industrial fertilizers, NPK fertilizers that are used on large agribusiness, 10,000 acre farms. The amount of fertilizer is not going to be there next year for the world. So he was saying get ready for yield reductions per acre on how many bushels or tons are coming out due to the lack of available fertilizers. There will be some, but it's not going to go to zero. They're looking somewhere around 10 to 12% reduction in global availability next year. And you have to wonder how that 10 or 12% reduction in fields will then push down on the bushels coming out of whether it's soybeans, corn, whatever it is. Now, so that's one factor in itself. And looking back through history, the average of these price spikes, they seem to have occurred about every 5 years during these grand solar minimums, is a 4x. Now, there was an extreme example in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, where else was it? Brussels, and areas in that specific region of what is now Austria, Germany, going over into the Netherlands. Around 1640, 1650, it spiked 7x. But otherwise, when you look through just the trend of a regular grand solar minimum, about 4x is where you go. And you have to think about, with energy prices rising and food prices rising, and you get to everything's exponentially increasing, at what point does the average person not have the ability to pay for that? And then again, all we do is we're just flipping the pages of history going, oh, that looks exactly the same. Gee, when did they go to the streets? How did they topple the government? What kind of institutional changes were put forth after that? How did the economy shift? How did it change? So we are looking at things that are rhyming, but now to put a timeline on it, the biggest thing for me just yesterday was Safeway is now putting collapsible gates into their supermarkets so you can't run out with carts full of groceries to prevent flash mobbing. But again, that's a great excuse. Flash mobs are hitting the Hermes stores, the Gucci, the Prada store was hit. Now the supermarkets are saying, well, we need to do that too, because look, they hit a $5,000 handbag. You know they're going to go for that can of tuna next. I mean, it's baked in there. You know this was the plan to control access to food. Then they're going to put troops there, and then that's where we're going by Q1 of 2022. In my opinion, I just see things unfolding kind of like you do. I'm just putting my little twist on it, a little bit of cinnamon. It is the Christmas season.
Well, let me go over part of that again, because I heard it and we've had a bit of an off film conversation. So this idea that we're putting these gates in at Safeway so that the mobs can't run out with a can of tuna, but the real reason is that they want to control everything in and out. Isn't that what you're suggesting?
You said it. We both agree on it. That's, and how has it been set up so far where you need the passes to go in? Okay, if you got the green check right now, or the green QR code, that is going to change in just a couple more months or even less. They're going to redefine what fully vaccinated entails, where you'll have to have yet a third or a fourth to continue to keep that code green. Then what? So you can kind of see how everything's being set up for the control of food itself. Now, how long do you think it'll be like the grain shipments being robbed in England, in the Wolf and the Monter Minimum both, before it starts to happen here where they'll hit the trucks on the road that are full? We saw the same things in Venezuela. They would stop a chicken truck with 5,000 chickens on it, and 200 people would run out, ripping cages off, and chickens flying everywhere, and just like completely strip that truck in 5 minutes on the highway. So how far of a stretch is that, or how long in the time duration before that starts happening here? And then, how will the governments control it? Of course, troops, access. You probably have to prepay before you go into some places, show proof of funds now. It wouldn't surprise me. Nothing would surprise me any longer.
Great. Another one that really popped in, and this was not, pre-done, and that was, the oil crisis, peak oil, and there's so many people that, that's a big myth, and that, with fracking, which is a story I won't go into now. I'm not, the fracking thing is not all it's cracked up to be, pun intended. But in one of the oil documentaries, which I probably watched 3 times, one of the ones that just sunk to the pit of my stomach was it takes 10 calories of energy to produce 1 calorie of food. So I think if we go at the big picture, and I know how good a thinker you are, because I watch almost all of your work, David, it's all energy based, really. So if oil prices are going higher, that means transportation costs are up. It means everything related to food is going up. So you might be fairly well off now, where 10% of your food budget, or 10% of your total budget is food. Maybe it goes double. But your utility bill doubled, and your automobile costs doubled, and everything else doubled. So it's kind of a big picture. Can you kind of walk us through your thinking on how this could affect not only the food supply, but further perhaps breakdowns and civil unrest?
Well, one thing I wanted to throw in on top of the list you just mentioned is, if you had seen the life insurance providers this year paid out the most in death claims that they ever have. So you can also anticipate healthcare and also life insurance premiums going up because of the massive amount of payoffs. Now, at what point do they roll and say, wait a minute, too many people are dying too quickly, we just can't pay off all this? So where does that money go once it leaves the hands of somebody into the will, into the family? Okay, they got a pile of money for a minute, and then what happens? But if you look back in history, the reason people left and moved to different areas, a fingerprint of a grand solar minimum would be population reduction, population migration, economic collapse, and then a restructuring of government. So you can see already, whoever knew this cycle was front running it enough to lock the planet this time, where people couldn't move in mass like they have the last, I've studied the last 6 of these events pretty well, back to say 2,400 years ago in the Homeric minimum, something like this moving forward. And what happens is these people move when they can't either grow the food, have access to the food, have a job to pay for food, or just things become so dire and so unworkable and unlivable that they would literally pack up oxen carts or get on ships or leave the way you could in the 1600s, 1350s, 800 AD, 2,000 years ago, literally at the 0 mark, birth of Christ year. I mean, where do you go? Well, if you could prevent that from this time, you would absolutely stave off a lot of things, because once those people moved, there was a secondary knock-on effect where you had masses and masses of people arriving in new areas that overwhelmed the systems that were functional and in place there. And then the amount of crime would increase because the people arriving didn't have jobs, and it was instantly there was food there and they were grabbing, and there's a lot of things went in a different direction. Even though they were in safety, it was a struggle to stay in safety because people there that were at the level to still subsist and have a decent life. Now you got double the amount of population moving in less than a year, and things just went topsy-turvy. And then the locals were getting very angry of all these people coming in with their ox carts or by ship, or things getting overwhelmed and overladen of just a huge tidal wave of migration. And where does it go? When people can't afford what they need to live, what do people resort to? I mean, yeah, using sound money, gold and silver, but if you don't have that, most people, I think, would resort to stealing to stay alive, feeding your kids. That's another thing, you know, these parents that are going to try to keep their children alive are not going to obey the rule of law in any way, shape, or form. The way they're looking at it is, you, my friend, are standing in the way of my children eating. That's where it's going to come down to in the beginning of it. So repeats in history are stark, but it's gonna happen like a flash mob. But it's going to happen so unbelievably quick, and it's going to catch everybody off guard. Within the next 4 months, I would say no later than March, which, by the way, wild card, we're going to be entering into that second magnetic field in earnest all the way through 2024 in March of 2022.
Well, let's talk about that. The magnetic field, we're in an electric universe. I'm convinced we're electrical beings. I'm convinced of that. So now when we get, let's say, a higher or lower vibrational level, I think it's higher, listening to previous videos. How could that, or what's your, I'll call it hypothesis, if I may, you can correct me, on what that energetic field that we're going to be going through could do possibly to humanity?
Well, humanity in the physiological level and the spiritual level is one subset, and then we have the atmosphere and the way it's going to bend, which is another subset, and then we have the crust of the planet going to act and behave in a certain way as well. So you have all these variables overlaying on top of each other, in addition to what's going on with the economy, the food price increases, and people are going to really have to get together to start growing more food locally. So if you allow me to dissect that for a second, right now Jupiter is right where it's coming into these 4 gas giants lining up in a square in October of 2024. Now, any of you who have solar system scope or some sort of JPL software, universal sandbox, you can go into these modelings of where the planets will be at what time. You know, they have an orbit, it can be calculated, so just spin it out to October of 2024, and you'll see a really unique square formation that is out there. Well, Earth will be in the center of that, coming as sort of a parallel with the sun, and a second magnetic field out there with the Earth in the center, and a toroid looping magnetic field. Energies are increasing because we, have stepped into Aquarius, and the astrology just literally mapped the frequency of the field we're moving through, and then astronomy explains where the planets sit as they transverse around through these different energetic fields. Different way to think about it, you can name it, I don't know, a scientific name, or you could give it a name like Aquarius or Taurus or Leo. Just different frequencies of energy and how fast something's going to vibrate, including the human residence, the Earth, the solar system, and it's all mapped out. It's been mapped out. That's why you have 12 zodiacs and like the precession of the equinoxes and all these things. They know exactly where the energies are flowing within that region of space that we're transiting with that different energetic frequency. So this one's a faster frequency. So everything's going to be moving faster, including our Earth crust is going to start rifting a little bit. We're going to see splits. And this is a wild card that I'm calling right here. Right around March of 2022, there's going to be more strangeness of disrupted infrastructure, rail lines splitting, bridges just coming undone from their banks, locks not being functional because they split or uplifted, fiber optic cables rifting, and just a whole bunch of things like pipeline breaks just from the Earth rifting. There'll be more of that in the first 2 to 3 weeks of March than there would be in the last 10 years. And it's an anomaly to take a look at that just verifies this second magnetic fields in play. And then how does the human deal with it? Because our magnetosphere is weakening, the sun's heading into a grand solar minimum, our magnetic poles are in incredible amounts of what they call polar wander, they're jumping all over the place. Magnetic field stabilization is not there. Increasing cosmic rays, and then our brains, the way with the two hemispheres being magnetic also, with all that electromagnetism shifting downward, energy frequency upward, how's the human brain going to play into perception of all this? You know, I'm firmly of the belief, and I might get a little woo-woo here, but the Great Reset is all about these elitists understanding the new frequency field changes. So they have to reset it, because what the old frequency was of the last 2,000 years, that doesn't match anymore. So a new system of top-down overseership of the planet needs to be. So then we got cryptocurrency, and we got the Great Reset, and the whole carbon credit scheme, and the personal carbon credit allocations, and the eco-valuation for a new base of asset for digitizing forests for a value, or the earth itself for a value to create a new currency, all based on just changes that they see coming. The old system can't hold, fiat's going to go away. And David, we talked about fiat for a long time. But these shifts in the atmosphere in earnest, when the jet stream's growing out of their flow, and the cloud cells are going to move into different positions because they're not locked in, decreasing magnetosphere, and a second magnetic field, which very few people have any idea what's going to happen. I hear a lot of, oh, it's so slight, it's only a tiny one. Okay, I understand it's a tiny one, but it's a second magnetic field not seen since 1486 or 79 AD is the best match for this one. So we got to go back 2,000 years in history to find the same planets where they sit in that square and where the Earth will reside in the middle of it. The last time it was at this intensity, 1 degree of arc difference, was 79 AD. I mean, something vast is about to occur here. And when you start to take a look at it, it's going to be a holistic spiritual side to change. It's going to be you and your mind being willing to change, and acceptance of change, and change being the state of waking being that you are, not stability, but change will be the new waking state. And if you see plasma dancing across the skies and electrified skies, that's going to throw things off. People are just not going to react the same. And the now, I'm calling 2023 the year of now, because at that point, there'll be no more future. Everything will be at this point of just staying alive, moving through changes, etc., in the now in 2023, because investing in the future for, your retirement 401k, that will have zero, that won't even be on the radar any longer, 2023. But the impetus and the first push into it to really see where these changes are going to take us, all eyes on March 2022, and a whole bunch of people are talking about stock market collapse at that point too. So, I maybe threw out too much information there to kind of come back at, but that's the way I'm seeing it.
Well, a lot to unpack, and I don't want to, it happens to me.
I know, get out 2 suitcases and lay it out.
Well, they give me, 4 questions, and by the time I got the third one answered, I can't remember the fourth one. But the first would be, how are you, I won't say so sure, but how have you dialed in on that date? You seem pretty confident of that March 2022. How can you be, that sure of the date?
The magnetic fields. Once we're in that, we're going to be in it. Now, it's going to be intensifying day upon day after that point. If you look at what happened the last time the Earth was coming around in the March-April date last year, swinging around and not even fully locked in the magnetic field, there was an enormous amount of volcanic eruptions and earthquakes at that same time last year. And you could see it, it was sort of what that crossover point. 2019, again, was a big year coming in around March and April. It seems that that's the point that our Earth really starts to hit and vibrate in that new field. But this year is going to be quite different, where we are truly encompassed in the entire field until we come to the very center of it. Now we're sort of on the periphery, out on the right, if you will, slowly marching in rate to be directly in the center with all the gas giants in there. You got to realize these gas giants are unignited stars. Jupiter is, in my consideration, a brown dwarf along with so many others. It's an unignited star. And if you go back in the past, they talk about Saturn glowing in the skies, much larger than we see today, like 1/8 of the sky, which means it is possible for electromagnetic activity to increase and excite atmospheres or turn on something into a higher glow mode inside there. But you see how large these planets outside in our solar system, there's a lot of magnetic pull. There's a lot of electromagnetism flowing through that square out there. They're going to start interlooping on themselves. And if you count from the outer planets in, and you're going Jupiter, Mars, and then Earth. So that field is going to be terminated at Jupiter, and then you have Mars and then Earth. So we're just 2 planets away from that second magnetic field. But if you look at the sun, we're the 3rd planet away. So as toroid looping fields are coming across our planet here, we're two planets away from the second field, 3 planets away from the main field. And how's that going to interact? Well, as we come into March, we're going to see, because that's the first time in earnest in the last 2,000 years we'll be locked in this pattern again.
Okay. Take me to another thought I had, and it's maybe a digression. We can address it or not. We're having a discussion, but you know, the Schumann resonance. I mean, I know some of the meditation work I've done. You know, when I get to that, I think it's 7.8 hertz. You know, I actually have a device that resonates at the Schumann resonance. It just seems very calming, grounded. I don't want to be too woo-woo on it. So give me any thoughts on, one, the Schumann resonance, where we are relative to that, where we're going relative to that, and when we do get that change, where we've been, for my personal experience, pretty happy at that frequency, and now we're forced to change it. What do you have to say?
Chapters of history would be the best guide, because as we go through the centuries and the millennia, you know, is it even comparable on how humans had thought 2,000 years prior, or the systems of government or economy that surrounded that civilization at the time? And then it shifted with the same energies moving. So how will it be this time with 8 billion people out here? What happens if we lose the internet? We lose connectivity. At that point, how are the biggest, I wouldn't say fear, but the thing to think about is, how will people really react to it? And what if the sky does change tinge because the sun steps down in activity even further, and the spectral out in terms of light changes? Because if you go Roy G. Biv and you're taking a look at the red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, see, John Casey in his first book on Cold Sun put a blue angstrom wavelength sun on the front cover. So, you know, you've seen the sun go from the yellow, which we knew as a kid, and before that, orangish. So it's stepping down. Now maybe we're at this midpoint where the reason it's white now is that transitional phase between output, light output. Now, how is this going to be absorbed by humanity if we see changes of everything we saw was so stable that it was the crux and the base rock and the bedrock of all belief of life itself, that your sky is blue, your sun is yellow, no, orange, no, I mean white now. Okay, it changed already. But the bedrock of what it is, things don't appear in the skies that are plasma and hang up there for 15 seconds glowing like dragons. Or the squatter man doesn't appear in the sky. That's not a normal thing. But these are very possible events that we're going to see moving forward in 2024. Now, far before that, food prices, I mean, how do you think people are going to react to everything at the point where it gets so costly that they can't afford life anymore? And then in addition, you're getting all these, I wouldn't say psychic changes, but it would be perceptions. I just think the illusion is going to dissolve in front of a lot of people, where it's going to be laid bare, where a lot of people can see truly the systems of manipulation and control upon them and the world itself. And it'll be almost as if you opened a curtain and you're looking at out a window on a bright sunny day. It'll be that clear and that stark of a difference. And then how will people react to that? So it's the whole wild card is the human element here, on how they are going to perceive and react to changes, from politics to economy to availability to starvation, famine, population migration, and then all these things in terms of Earth changes and actual physical planetary changes. I know, again, a lot to unpack there. Too early for you. Double espresso there, David.
Well, I remember, and it was years ago, where that, I won't call it an ultimate truth, but a very good look when, and I think the way it was stated was the thin veneer of civilization. And reading, history and what happens when that thin veneer is peeled off and there isn't enough food and the economy is in disarray and it's basically Darwinian survival of the fittest. And you take it for granted, especially someone my age in the boomer generation, that things have been pretty darn good for birth till recent times, up until really there's been wars, there's a Vietnam. I mean, I can make a case for disruptions, but basically, we didn't have any real food supply problems, and there was always more in the store. You didn't have empty shelves, during a hurricane or whatever. So now we're facing what you said, and it's not just here in the U.S. It's basically everywhere. It's been that way in, let's say, very underdeveloped nations. So with what I see coming, I agree with, I think, everything you've said so far. It's frightening to think about what happens when that thin veneer is peeled off and people do whatever they have to do to be able to feed their kids or get some water or, whatever. And that's very scary. I mean, it goes to a dystopian movie, except it's reality. And I don't even like to even talk about it. I remember early on about, my take on the monetary system, which I've done for my life. And someone asked me, well, do you think there'll be social unrest? I said, yes, there will be social unrest. And I didn't downplay it at the time. And from what I'd seen from that point of view, you would have definitely disruptions in the large cities because there's so much, welfare type of situations where people get food stamps or one of those debit card things from the government to get their food. And those things fail because, one, you're not getting enough food for the amount on the card, or there's a disruption in the electronic system where it doesn't read the card, or any of these variables that could take place. You can have a really quick turnabout where one day you're safe and sound and, aware, and the next day, they're riding in the streets, there's food fights or breaking windows and grabbing stuff. And that frightens me, and I think others, as it should. And, what is the precautions you can take? I mean, only so many of us can, hide out in very low population densities, have enough food where we could last for a month by ourselves or whatever, which is a short-term solution, but certainly not a long-term solution. So why don't you pick up on my thread? I know what you've done. We've talked about it, from time to time. And you've done a lot in Tennessee, and congratulations on that. And I know you're making a strong community, which is where it all lies. You can't really get stored food in your own well in a shotgun and think you're really safe. You're not. It does come down to community, which means, I guess, and I'm not trying to answer the question for you, unless you've really thought this thing through from a longer term perspective, as you have, you may be in a situation that all of a sudden you find yourself in, there's really no out to it. Am I right?
That is, one thing about the cards going down for EBT system, but what if it went down for, you and I, we couldn't use our credit cards, we couldn't use our debit cards, couldn't get money out of the ATM. Hopefully you would have had some spare cash, literally cash in small denomination notes laying around the house in your safe somewhere, gold, silver, so you could still trade. Because I talk to the Amish guys and they're always willing to take silver for anything. Still, they prefer that versus the paper dollars. But I think if what you're talking about and describing, where you start to see flash mobs cracking open windows and breaking into supermarkets and it all goes down, we would have a probably good 2-week lead out here before those masses would make it out to the more rural countryside. But I think it was, you said, they only have 1 tank of gas, so they're only going to come out so far because they realize they need to go home. So that's viable for 1 or 2 runs for them. But then, again, it's all about growing more food after you eat the food by having seeds in a community to work together to replenish the stocks. Because marauders are in the worst position. They've used violence and coercion to go get their supplies. They burned a half a tank of gas to get out. They burned a half a tank to get back. And then their supplies are going to run out again because they have no way to replenish the stocks except stealing again. So to even be in the mind frame of working together to be able to grow food or whatever it might be to help filter water or keep heat going. I have a triple redundancy. If my electric goes out, I have a yurt out there with camp stove. So I can at least cook and have light. It's got glass on the sides. It's a winter well stove. we can burn wood and still be able to have boiled water, have heat and light, and with all the solar devices, we can still charge everything and have communications running off of solar recharging. Okay, that's small, but again, in trying to build a community, it's not a, you make it seem like I have thousands of people out here all organized. It's not like that at all. It's, people come out and help on the weekends, parents come down, other family come in, other people will come by and help and do something. They know it's a safe zone here. If something happens, you could definitely get over here and we'll take care of you. But at what point is it really going to drop out? You get that 2-week safety net, and then you are going to have a lot of people run into your place, because if your place is way that far out where you're still getting a good 14 to 20 days of safety in advance of the mobs, there are going to be way people coming out to your place to help you. And then it's just like it was in the Old West. Towns protected themselves, and the stories in the medieval times, if you want to go in that direction, it came down to communities policing communities. And it's been like that time immemorial. You probably know better than I how people would prevent the marauders from coming in. Yeah, you could build a fort, you can build high walls, but we don't have that time or energy to do that. But they're gonna have to come up with a local kind of economy too. Now, will that take the form of silver and gold usage or barter? You know far more about historical precedent for that. So let's say you do pull back and you got a community together. We got all these homes around here on the 200 acres, like 6 other homesteads here. Okay, everybody comes in, and then let's say 200 or 300 other people come out, and we can all totally protect this place. Nobody's coming in. All right, well, then there's another 2 of those communities down over here, about 4 miles that way, 5 miles that way. Oh, wait, there's another one over there. Okay, so what kind of local, small, usable items would it be for a new economy to workable, so I could trade with them and we don't have to actually haul over 200 pounds of apples to trade for something? Although that's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's a book called The Patriot by Rawlings, I think. And it kind of goes through that whole scenario as things kind of settle down, and there are communities that have survived, and some, I guess you could say, thrive, and they would have like I'll call it a giant flea market, and kind of have security on the way in, and things got calm, and I think it's a well thought out book. But I don't enjoy talking about this, but I've always been a realist. I think it's important that people know that it's not something that's unusual in the long dates of human history. As you said, the Old West is basically, a group of people that built a town and looked after each other. I think it is going to come to that in some areas. I think to me, a very low lifestyle is a very high population density. I mean, even though I'm a football fan, I've been to many live games. You go into a stadium of 80,000 people. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. You're just a little sardine moving with the crowd. I mean, you can't really set your own pace. The crowd sets the pace. You move exactly whatever, RPM the crowd's moving. So back on point, let's be, I won't say positive. Outside of what I've done personally, you've done personally, what would be like, let's say 3 things that you would tell the audience they can do? Take a deep breath. There is randomness, people that are in situations in the middle of the city that think from our conversation that maybe they don't have much of a chance if things really break down. I'll say if things really break down, they'll do fine. So there's this randomness that we cannot calculate ahead of time. There's too many variables in the human experience to say that everything goes a certain direction at a certain time. Having said that, what would be the top 3 things that you would suggest people do?
Learn some wild foraging. Understand that your mind and our minds in the world globally, the populace, our minds are so powerful that it could shift in seconds if people were thinking of the same thing. And this layer of reality that we exist in now could be bent or moved. And it's been talking about time immemorial. When large groups of people come together and focus on a single thought, reality bends. Now, if you could take it to 8 billion people thinking the same thing, reality would bend. Oh, wait, they've already done that in the media to get us to bend for the elitists to move our world. What do you think the media is for? Is to get you to bend your mind the direction they want it to go to create the reality in front of you. So why would it not be the inverse of that, knowing that that power exists in everybody? will probably increase during these times with the sixth sense and different types of senses. And I hate to limit it to the sixth, because there's going to be so many things that are coming of abilities that we won't understand. We'll have to make new lexicon or new words for it based on the electromagnetic changes on the sun stepping down, a second magnetic field in earnest starting, and we haven't really experienced this. And what is history anyway? I mean, 2,000 years ago, I mean, the history is very murky back then. What are the accounts of supernatural powers coming through, or people being able to manifest a new world at that time by thought? So keep that in mind, that it's not all doom and gloom, that you still have your hope, your mind, your thoughts, your feelings to be able to bend and move your own reality too through this time. And it's going to be a mind game. You either stay positive that you think you can get through it and find your community and learn how to wild forage, and maybe take some of those wild forage edibles and learn what medicines you can create from them. But it's going to be about finding the community, maybe reaching out. Maybe I was too standoffish to, put my hand out away from people. It's hard to know who to trust, to bring into a community. But now that I think that time has passed, I think just like oil and water, things are just floating into different layers. And if somebody's coming out to your property, they're the ones that you probably want out there, because, I don't know, just manifest destiny right now, the way it's working. It seems that a lot of equal vibratory persons are coming together, and it's just like magnets pulling each other together. So go find that community and find out where your local water sources are too. Just because you're in a city doesn't mean there's no water. If the water gets turned off, or do you even know how to walk out of a city? Let's say all the transportation's blocked off, and can you walk out of a city? That's a practice thing to do too. But once you get out of that harm's way, then what? See, you're gonna have to have a community and somehow be able to get to it. How many movies have we seen in Hollywood where they escape the city, but then they got to go, however many miles or whatever to get to that survival place, and all their adventures trying to get there, and trying to stay away from bandits and sneak through the forest at night and avoid the guards over there and crawl over the barbed wire and get over there. Finally, we made it. Pre-planning would be the best thing, and keeping your mind in a positive, knowing that we've survived this through history.
Yes.
And you have a timeline.
Right.
At least in my opinion, which most people didn't before. That's hugely powerful to know the timeline on it.
Well, I'm going to make one comment and give it back to you if there's anything you'd like to say to finish us off. Thank you very much for your time. And this came to me just the other night. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but I've often talked about, money is power. And if you have the money power, the money masters, the elites, the bankers, you have power over people, because most people, not all people, can be bought. But then I thought, really, what is the ultimate power? There's one who has all power, that's God. May you find him now. And my point of that 3 sentences is love. It sounds corny. To some people, it sounds corny. Not certainly from my life's experience, that love could conquer nearly anything. And I think I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you circled that idea. And I thought it's important from now on that I try to at least convey that somewhere in any interview that I do or any that I give, that we really have got to stay grounded and focused, and not get too wrapped up in what could be, but what is for our reality. Where you're at in Tennessee, you're going to have a different set of circumstances where I will, either in Washington or Montana, wherever I end up. And you can plan ahead. Of course, I wouldn't have stored food if I didn't plan ahead. But nonetheless, it's that person that does come to the gate, and you take them at an individual basis and examine it right then and there to your best of your given ability, and you make a decision. You don't have to sit there and really worry about what's happening in the next large town, because that's really out of stuff you could control. So if you'd like to comment on that, what I'm trying to convey here is that stay in the right frame of mind, have the right attitude, know that it's an experience here. It's not a forever thing. Everybody has an end point. As the late, great Jim Morrison said, no one here gets out alive. So we really want to do with the time that we have, be it short or long, under whatever human conditions we find ourselves, if we can, stay in the most powerful place we can be, and that's in the power of love.
It is, and knowing that there's a great creator that is out there that is beside you, in you at all times, that power resides in your atoms, in your molecules. You're not separated from the field. You're in it, you're part of it. So as we move forward, mind is going to be everything, including your belief system, so you come to the point of death. I mean, you're back with the great creator. Okay, we either live here on this planet in this plane. If you exit that, it's going to be probably better than living through this nightmare that's about to unfold. Don't fear things as you move through as well. The power of knowing you can grow food and harvest it and provide and forage and be able to purify water and have the basic needs met. I mean, that is so empowering. Even if you know how to build something for shelter, that is an empowering thing in itself. And then drawing on these energies, and through all the mystics and all this time, since time immemorial, using this force that's around us. Now, what you want to term that as, there's thousands of terms for it, but it's that energy field and consciousness of all time, space, dimensionality that is creation itself of the creator. So to step inside that field and know that you can move in that field, build from that field of love and vibration and light, that's a very powerful thing. Just the hopelessness needs to go. You can do something. The situation's going to get a little rough moving forward. Change is going to be a constant, and as long as you know the changes or can at least anticipate a few of them, you can stay ahead. It's just, I feel a little empathy and sorrow for people who just won't know what's coming, and every time they move, it'll be because they're acting on what had happened, not seeing in advance maybe what could happen and getting ready. So when it does come, you're already ready to move. Where they'll just be stuck and go, what just happened? Oh, whoosh, and get pulled by the shirt. You got to go this way. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That shouldn't be like that for anybody. So to have just, you'll know when it's happening. It's not like it's gonna not be knowable. It will be, I think it'll be a shift in consciousness where everybody would know this is happening at the same time. It'll put our world into so much action. When you look at the signs of, like before there's an earthquake, an enormous amount of worms come out of the ground, snakes come out of the ground, frogs emerge, whatever, elephants run to the hills. They're feeling the electrostatic charge through the crust. They're feeling it. The electric discharge is felt by animals, not so much humans. But it's the same thing. I really feel this time we are going to become the animals. When this happens, it's going to be an electric charge through the entire, I don't know whether it be atmosphere or whatnot, but it will affect every human where you'll just trigger it on and go, whoa, something's up, game time right now. It's undeniable. There's no way to put it past, but it's here. And you're just going to intuitively sense that it's here. And you might even move much more succinctly, and every single action you take might be the perfect action. I don't know. There's a lot of these things that are primal instincts that have kept us alive through millions of years of these changes. And I can't believe that would just disappear because we have the internet now. Like, that's hard woven into us.
I agree. Well, David, it's always fascinating to speak with you. And I've watched you, I'll say, develop. I think you're more interesting than the first time I stumbled upon Adapt 2030, and I said, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And I know somewhat of your background because we're pretty, consider you a friend, about, what you did in the coffee business and when you were in China, which fascinated me. I was only in real China, I'm not counting Hong Kong, where I've been multiple times, but Beijing for several days. And just even in that short time, you kind of get a flavor for the culture, and so much different in so many ways. And I won't digress any further, but really appreciate your time, your insights, and what you are doing to help others, to look ahead, be real about it, don't overreact, but at least take appropriate actions, because, the word satisfaction has the word action in it. If you just sit there and contemplate things all day, that's not going to work. You have to have something that you put into action, I think, in order to really be able to adjust, adapt, and go with whatever is presented to you.
And you have this weekend for action. go buy seeds, order seeds online, go out to the store, get beans and things that you can sprout into microgreens, just a whole bunch of things. You got a whole weekend, you can do some action this weekend. Yeah, David, I appreciate you having me on so we could talk further. I know I kind of hogged the mic on the time here. I was hoping to get some insights out of you too. I feel like a mic hog.
No, that's good. I mean, I think it was more important for my viewers to listen and, and plus it's a different venue than we usually do, but food, and be more self-reliant and value what you have. We are too wrapped up in this Western world, particularly of what, stuff rather than what we need. And we need more love. We need more love between us. That's a real big negative on Western culture in my studied view. And we're going to get the opportunity here every day to manifest that to everyone within our sphere.
And humanity, we're going to have to collectively put a camel through the eye of a needle. And I think it can be done. Truly, it can.
All right. Until we see each other again, thank you for your time. Can you tell us where they can find out more information?
On YouTube, as long as I exist there, the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast, which I'm starting to put back up again. You can find that anywhere podcasts are hosted. Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and Brighteon. Those are all the Adapt 2030. At Adapt 2030, if you want to get into each of those different platforms. I've kind of gone away from updating everything. I don't see a ROI on it anymore of updating the website or, putting up social media posts or anything. I want to use the time to get ready here more. We're so close to it right now that, looking to the future for me, I'm reevaluating the future. So I'll keep the information coming as long as I can. And it's all time for us to get ready at this moment. So yeah, I appreciate your time, David. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.